We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. We are into the weekend. Things should settle down news wise, but probably not. If Donald Trump is involved, there's going to be some goofy shit going on. We have the good fortune of having a guest today. That is Eric from Iowa. It's always a pleasure to have Eric in. It's great having all kinds of guests in because for my money, it makes the show better and flow better and all that sort of stuff. So, Eric, thanks for joining us again today.
Well, thanks for having me back on. I love being on the podcast and sharing the little bit I know with the rest of the listeners.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to bring something up. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. I know there's a lot of confusion, and some people are upset about some of the things going on. So we need to clarify that for those folks. But we can talk. Remind the folks what your dog's name is. If you're watching
This is
on YouTube,
Cecilia.
Cecilia,
This is
cute,
Cecilia. Yep.
cute pup, very affectionate.
Yes. Very affectionate. She was a rescue,
I'm a, I'm a,
and I lucked out.
I'm a little envious because I can't have a dog. But even more importantly, that dog shows you more affection than my wife of 40 years does. So that's fucked up.
Yeah, she's really excited every time I walk in the door. She still does the excited puppy tippy tappies with her paws half the time
Yeah.
when I walk in. It's great. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh, I love dogs. I love dogs. Anyway, with all this shit going on, and you've heard me say before that I don't know that Donald Trump makes it to the nomination for no other reason than he physically or mentally cannot hold out. And clearly the pressure is getting to him. You know, he's going off on tangents. He's spouting shit that nobody knows what he's saying. But he said something recently. This is getting in his head, apparently. Uh, During this Taylor Swift crisis for Republicans, um, he's running around asking all his people, I'm more famous than Taylor Swift, right? I'm bigger than Taylor Swift. And they're going, yeah, of course. Well, he may be as well known as Taylor Swift, but there's a vast difference between fame and infamy. And Donald Trump is famous for being infamous and being a fucking pariah. But he took it a step too far, Eric. You maybe don't feel this way like I do, but this is some serious shit. Not only does he talk about being more famous than Taylor Swift, he went on stage last night and he was saying, a lot of people think I look like Elvis Presley. Do you think I look like Elvis Presley? I, I'm going to tell you something, Eric. As a boomer, that's too far. You don't fuck with Elvis Presley. Does he look like Elvis Presley? Well, maybe when Elvis died on the floor of his bathroom in his bloated, convulsing state, maybe he looks like Elvis. But to compare him to Elvis is just fucking nuts. You know what Elvis would do? Elvis would beat him in a car race, kick his ass, steal his wife and his daughter, find out that they're hookers, kick them to the curb, then to go do a concert and have all the women he possibly wanted. So fuck him. And then they'd say, well, he's a billionaire. Donald Trump's a billionaire. Elvis don't need money. He's fucking Elvis. He don't need no fucking money.
If Elvis didn't die when he did, he probably would be a billionaire, and he probably
Yeah,
would have been there before most of them, and he would be laughing his ass off.
yeah, he would. He would have. And Elvis is older than Joe. So what the fuck?
Yeah.
But have you sensed what I've sensed about the beginning? Well, maybe not the beginning, but the decline of Donald Trump mentally, emotionally. And I have this feeling that once it starts, it's going to go fast. You get that same sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was just his comment the other day. He was asked if he was going to use his campaign funds to pay the 83.3 million to E. Jean Carroll, which he legally cannot do.
Right.
Um, but was asked about it. I didn't lose that. I won that. I won that. It was tossed out on appeal. The He is in some state of delusion where he is so far from reality. I mean, this could be his only way out of all the criminal charges, is that he's not in a state of mind to stand trial, to understand what's going on around him.
Yeah, I don't know if that would save him though, because he's got all these LLCs and companies, and whether he's of a sound mind or not, those companies are still going to get the heat. The money's going to have to be paid, and the properties are going to have to be taken away. It's just no two ways about it.
Well, I wasn't talking about the financial case. I was just talking about his criminal trials. He
Oh,
might spend the
well,
rest of his days, instead of a prison, it might be in a nursing home or an assisted living facility or something, because he's not, or a mental hospital or something, because he's so far out there and so far delusional, he doesn't know what reality is.
well, and he could be the self-proclaimed dictator of Golden Palms Nursing Home, and he might be just fine with it. Somebody even made a joke. Someone even made a joke that he's losing it so much that they just put in a nursing home and put in a replica Oval Office and let him go in there every day and act like the fucking president. You know what? That would probably
He
work
would,
with him.
as long he would probably believe it, and as long as there's even fake TV cameras and somebody makes it look to him like he's in front of a crowd and and his stuff's getting broadcast, I don't know if he would know the difference.
No, I don't think he would know the difference. And, that's the question when he says stuff like that. Well, I was exonerated on that. Is he delusional, or is he just so caught up in this gaslighting that he's done his whole life that he thinks he can convince people that it's true? I don't know. It's pretty pitiful either way.
Either that, or he's done enough of this gaslighting that he's gaslit himself to believing that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, I mean, he might legitimately believe it. Maybe not that he's delusional, but he said it so many times to feed his ego and protect himself from the fallout mentally, that he's convinced it's true.
I think we're at the point now where we cannot deny that he is mentally or cognitively diminished at this point. And like I say, when you take his current state and the pressure that's hanging over his head, this decline could happen very quickly and it could get very pathetic very soon. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think he'll make it to the nomination. He just won't be fit. I mean, he's not fit now, but he will be will be shitting his pants, drooling on himself, and mumbling weird shit. I just get a sense that that's going to happen.
I think you're probably right, but part of me is also wondering if they're not going to do everything they can to shelter him from as much of this and keep him out of the public view as much as possible, to where they can just keep running until they're told he can't be on the ballot or he's not eligible. That they keep running him out there because they know without him, the down ballot races fall.
Yeah, everything falls, and I think that's where we're headed ultimately. I mean, the Republicans um, have a lot of trouble right now. I was just reading something. Here's a party that prides itself on money. It's all about money, giving money to rich people who don't need it, the money and the power. But we're now hearing the RNCs having a little bit of money trouble because they ain't got none. They're at about $8 million in their coffers. In 2016, they had $21 million, and of course, Ronna McDaniel is the RNC chairperson, and they're blaming her. And she's going, "Hey, man, it's not me; it's the whole party." And this is the one time I'd agree with Ronna McDaniel. Nobody could run that RNC and keep money in it because the whole fucking Republican shit show is doing everything they can to bury themselves.
I'd agree, but only to a point. I think a good chunk of the blame does fall on her, because how much of RNC money was she spending on Donald Trump legal fees? That
Exactly.
they might not have the 21 million, but they might have had 12, 14, 16 million,
Right.
which is still in better shape. And when it looks like they're close in money, maybe she can then, rally the troops and get the donations coming in. But they've been kowtowing to Trump for so long, and they agreed to pay his fees for how long? It's it's no wonder they're hurting. How many state parties did we hear where the what was it, the Minnesota Republican Party a while back had $50 in their bank account or something
Right.
like that? Arizona was in about the same shape. A couple other ones were just as bad. I'm not surprised. They're falling apart. At this rate, they are not going to make it to 2026 as a
No,
party.
no, and in fact, when we look at, we've got these new polls out for Quinnipiac that say Joe Biden's leading. I still say don't believe polls. They're all have agendas, and it depends on who pays for them. Um, but the polling and Joe Biden's success is one thing. But if you want to get an indication how the Republican Party is doing, take a look at their fundraising. If they aren't getting any money, that means they don't have support. If they don't have support, they aren't going to win an election.
Yeah, exactly. And although I don't think fundraising as much is going to be as big of a part going forward, getting away from normal political attack ads and things, they've got to change their strategies, which might be cheaper, and
Yeah,
that would help the Democrats as well. But no, if the funding isn't coming there, because all these events and the rallies and campaign stops, that all takes money. And
right,
if they're not raising it, they can't get out in front of voters and have a chance at rallying the independents and the on the shelf Democrats that are only slightly Democratic, um, to maybe lean one way or the other. I think they're going to lose a lot of seats in the House. I think you're going to give Hakeem Jeffries probably no less than a 20 seat, 25 seat majority.
right.
Um, and beyond that, I think we'll keep the Senate too, just by, and it's going to be thin. It's going to be 50-50, 51-49, something like that. But I think if they're not fundraising, I don't think they're putting up a fight in Congress.
No, no, absolutely not. I think that Donald Trump has another problem with money too. All the big donors are bailing from his ass, and that's a big chunk of the money too. Koch brothers are going with Nikki Haley. That's one of the biggest, and they aren't supporting Donald Trump. This has all got to be weighing pretty heavily on his head. We find out now that he spent $50 million on lawyers' fees over the past year, year and a half, 2 years, whatever year I think it was, and that those legal fees aren't going to get better. They're going to get heavier as you come toward these trials. And I don't know where he's getting it from. He's not going to get it from the RNC. He's going to be losing all his monies in these lawsuits. He's in trouble that I don't even know how he can move leading up to the nomination with no money.
Well, exactly. And one of the things that, just as you were talking there, kind of clicked in my head, as you say, the RNC is running low on money.
Right.
Well, what big money donors are going to donate to the RNC or anything? They're going to donate specifically to their own PACs or whatever, before they donate to anything that Donald Trump is touching. If he's spending 50 million of because I heard it was PAC money
Right.
that he
Right.
spent on his legal fees, it was campaign money. So he's moving campaign stuff around to to spend on legal fees. If they're wanting to push candidates, they're not going to put their money at risk by giving it to the RNC or to anything that Trump has his hands in at all, for fear that it's going to go to Trump's legal fees and not towards supporting any candidates.
Right. Right, because at this point, I think they feel like Donald Trump is going to lose. I don't know how anybody in a right mind can't see that. If he is the nominee, there is no question he loses. I don't think he'll be the nominee, but I think the greatest gift to the Democratic Party would be if Donald Trump was the nominee. That would be the easiest call ever. But we know what Mitch McConnell did. Remember in the last 2022 election? He cut off money to people he knew was going to be a loser. They ain't going to throw good money after bad money. If this is a loser, the RNC and big donors aren't going to pour money into something they know is going to lose.
Yeah, I think there might be some movement behind the scenes that we haven't heard yet. Maybe Mitch McConnell, maybe a few other mega Republicans like that. Uh, Kevin McCarthy, who he was a big fundraiser, and now that he's out, um, that's bad news for Republicans in general. And there might be a movement, like I was saying, behind the scenes of saying, hey, you know what? We're going to put up enough money to make it look like we're fighting this thing. let's get MAGA crushed. Let's get Donald Trump out of the picture, and we'll come back fighting strong in 2026, 2028. Save and save your money till then. Let's not waste it, because why, like you said, why throw good money after bad?
Well, that seems like the logical choice here. For all intents and purposes, I believe there'll be a blue wave for no other reason than the Republicans have done everything they can to fuck themselves up. They have done nothing that benefited them, and everything they've done is going to cost them votes. And if you're a big money guy who knows something about business, that would be the only plan you have. Let's burn the fucker down and start over again. Problem with that is you can't burn everything down and then in 2026 be back to full speed. It's going to take you 5 to 10 years to get back to any control or power, which is good news, hopefully, for the country, because then the Republicans won't be as big a factor in the next decade.
The problem is they can't take 5 to 10 years.
No, I know.
They have to be up and going in 2 to 4 tops if the Republicans want to have a chance at being relevant in this country, or they're done. Otherwise, it's going to be by 2028 and definitely by 2032, which would be, I realize that's 8 years out, but if they're not rebuilt by 2028 and back strong by 2032, they're going to have maybe a 25% majority in the House, about the same in the Senate. Nothing will get done. Democrats will enjoy a super majority for at least 6 to 8 years,
Yeah.
and shit's going to start getting done, and they're just going to keep losing seats. They don't have a choice. They have to get it done. The Republicans do, if in 2 to 4 years, and there's no way to do it.
And you know what? I think in history, of course, Democrats will look at Donald Trump as a pariah. But after they see what Donald Trump did to the Republican Party and how he depleted any power, any money they had, the Republicans will probably talk shit about Donald Trump years from now. The younger people coming up, they're going, "You old people fucked this up by voting in Donald Trump, and now we've got to fight and scratch just to be relevant."
Yeah, and I had a thought pop in my head the other day at work. I was thinking about a former boss of mine for some reason, whose great grandfather. They said when the great grandfather passed, they were going through the house, and this was a guy here in Iowa. They found white robes and
Wow.
other memorabilia that made it look like he was very high up there in the KKK. And they weren't sure, that they suspected. And I think maybe it won't be to the same level of infamy as the KKK, and I'm not trying to necessarily compare the two, but as far as family history and being buried, when some of these hardcore MAGA fucks, um, when their grandkids and great grandkids go to clean out their houses and they find the red hats, they're just gonna and the Trump shirts and the Trump flags and all this stuff, it's gonna quietly be thrown away, burnt, and discarded. It's gonna be a family shame you don't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll go to the extent of uh, not unlike Hitler and Manson, um, all the people that are coming with the Trump name will probably change their fucking name because it will be that pariah like. Trump, the name Trump is going to have such a sour taste to everybody in this country when it's finally over. Even Republicans, it's like when you go to Germany and you want to talk about Nazis and they go, "Oh shit, we don't want to talk about that." That's what it's going to be like with Republicans. I'm already seeing it with some Republicans. Some people I argued about with Trump, I'll go to them now and I'll say, "Hey, you want to be on the show? You're a Trump fan. We're friends. Well, let's do this." And they go, yeah, I don't talk about politics anymore." Well, you were pretty sure of yourself, 2 years ago. Now you don't want to talk about it. Well, I'm too busy now. Yeah, I bet you are, motherfucker. You pussy ass bitch.
Exactly. They're already going to start putting the stuff in the closet, and they're the smartest of them have already started to see how big of a loser he is, and it's going to work its way down to the dumbest of the dumb. And eventually, when he loses again and he's sitting his ass in prison and he dies broken, penniless, um, they're going to walk away from him. Even his dumbest and most ardent supporters, and the ones that don't, they're going to become the family. They're not going to be the crazy uncle, or oh, we just don't bring grandma or grandpa to family dinners anymore because all they talk about is Trump, and they're just not going to be talked to by their family, and it's going to be shameful.
Yeah. Well, one thing I need to bring up too, something that happened last night. It's not big news, but it's news nonetheless. We had the South Carolina Democratic primary last night. And, this was the first one that Joe Biden was actually on the ballot. So it was going to be interesting to see what happened there. Last I checked it, now, of course, we're recording this the night before, so this is why I only know, but at 50 or 60% of the votes in, Joe Biden had 96.5% of the vote, or 55 delegates. Marianne Williamson had 2%. And Dean Phillips, my representative, that stupid motherfucker, he had 1.6%. I think Joe's making his statement very well that these other dumb fucks should just go away, get out of the way, because they don't have a prayer.
If those two, and I think there might be one or two more that are in the race for the Democrats, if they don't step away now, they'll be done by Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
It'll be over. The writing's on the wall. They tried something. They were playing off the Republican fear mongering and the Republican message that they were getting out there, that everybody hates Joe Biden. Joe Biden's horrible. He's too old. He's this. He's that. And clearly, the sane Democrats came out and said, "No, this is our guy."
Yeah.
I mean, would I prefer to have a 20-year younger Joe Biden? Sure. Would I prefer to have a young Barack Obama type person? Yes. But this is who we've got. And he's done a great job so far, given the hand he's been dealt. His message really needs to be, let's complete the job
Right.
going
Right.
forward.
That's one of the things I learned from being a young man. You walk into situations and it seems like an overwhelming amount of things you have to worry about. And the best thing you can really do is just slow it down. Pick the first thing you got to do the best you can, pick the second thing you got to do. And the first and second thing may not be something you prefer or like or is necessarily perfect for where you want to get to, but you still have to go through it. And that's the way it is with Joe Biden. Joe Biden has been a good president, maybe the most productive president in the history of this country in 3 years. Um, is it optimal that he's 80 years old? No, but that's just one stumbling block with a lot of positives behind it. Instead of saying, I want a guy that's got experience, that's had success, and I want him to be 55 years old. Well, that option isn't there. So we have to deal with what we have to deal with. Take Joe, get him elected, and then afterwards we can worry about getting your favorite perfect candidate. That candidate doesn't exist right now. So stop wondering and hoping and praying for it. It doesn't exist. We'll deal with what we've got, win what we can win, and then go on to live another day.
Exactly. Like I said before, I've said it several times on the podcast. I still think if we give Joe Biden enough of a lead in the House and we can hold the Senate, um, as long as I think he's going to get everything he can done in his first 2 years. He's going to look to finish and cement his legacy as fast as he possibly can.
Yeah.
And you are probably going to see one of the, like, from a political standpoint, a breakneck pace of things getting done. And then if they get shit done, I think they're going to keep the Senate and the House going into 2026. And I think at that point, we're on retirement watch because he
Right.
could retire at any point after that. It
Right.
would not surprise me. Would I hope for it? No. Do I think Kamala would do a good job? Yes, I think she would do great. But let's let's go with the guy that's got us there. Let's get as much done as we can. And then we go into 2028, we can get somebody younger, maybe Kamala, maybe somebody else. I don't know. I'm not looking that far ahead at this point, but we can, like you said, we can get a perfect candidate or a better candidate, and then we can just keep going from there and build on what Joe has done for us.
And let's be honest, if you want a younger, better candidate, you had your chance in 2016 during the primaries there. but you picked Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the right person. He's done the job. I don't know what more he can do. Um, yeah, I'd like to see him win the election, get to 2026. But let's be honest, he's in his 80s at that point. Anything could happen. So we have to be prepared for that possibility. But I think the most important thing right here isn't who's going to be president. It's that the Democrats are in power. Because, like you said, when Joe Biden gets in the second term, things are going to happen quickly because he knows he's short on time chronologically because he's old. If he does all the things he wants to do, he could be looked back at as one of the greatest presidents in the history of this country because he will have done more for the people in this country than anybody else. And when you see what he did in the first 3 years and how he was able to pull all that shit off and how he got shut down on the student loan stuff and now he's nickeling and diming the fuck out of them, you know, instead of going in one fell swoop, he's doing this group here, and he hasn't stopped going after the student loan thing, even though he was shut down by Congress. He has the ability to do a lot of shit in a short period of time. We've already seen it. He could be highly regarded once this is all said and done. He should be anyway right now, frankly.
Well, oh yeah, I mean, look at what even though they haven't hardly passed anything, in this Congress, the few things they've passed, all of them have been wins for Joe Biden
Yeah, absolutely.
in some
Infrastructure.
way, shape, or form. Even if it's procedural, I haven't seen one thing that the House has passed and signed into law that has gotten all the way through and become law that has not been a win for Joe Biden.
Right. Well, and that brings us to this current border situation. That's the one thing, the talking point the Republicans have against Joe Biden. Oh, the border's open. Oh, Joe Biden hasn't done anything. None of that is true. I think they've overhyped what's going on in Texas. It seems ironic that this crisis is happening in Texas, but not in California, New Mexico, and Arizona. I don't know why they aren't suffering through the same things. I mean, if you're a migrant and you're going to come across the border, you're going to come across at Texas rather than California. Please, motherfucker, they're smarter than that.
I mean, true, but the only two of the reasons we hear about it in Texas more than any other. One, Texas has more border than any
True,
of the other states.
true.
So yes, they are going to have more problems by number because they have more miles to deal with. But the other is we only ever hear about it out of Texas every every 2 to 4 years during an election cycle when there's a Democrat in the White House.
Right.
It's never a problem when there's a Republican in the White House. It's only when there's a Democrat in charge, and it's always worse than it's ever been. Um, and it's dumb. I mean, the path forward, we really need to get more judges down there. We need to do some more stuff to get path for amnesty and asylum um, figured out. Get people in and out through the system, and like I've been hearing, it's up to 10 years. You show up for asylum, and it's over 10 years before your case gets heard and gets decided.
Right.
Where you get to stay the whole time it's heard. Well, then you get denied. Well, now you've had 10 years where you've built a life here. Maybe you've had children or whatever. And now it's that much harder to get to deport you. They should be in and out in 6 months to a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tops. But we don't have the resources and we don't have the judges and the systems in place to deal with it.
I really think that Joe Biden and the Democrats have really played the Republicans on this border thing. That's the one thing they've gotten people most concerned about. That's the talking point they had against Joe Biden. But now we have this bill in the Senate. It's a bipartisan bill. There's maybe some question as to whether it'll pass in the Senate. I think it will. But there's real pushback on the House, even though nobody's seen the bill. Nobody's read the fucking bill yet, at least unless they just released it. But they're against it only because, well, they've said we don't want to give Joe Biden a win. We'll let the border continue to be a crisis just so Joe Biden doesn't get a win, which shows you who the Republicans are. But say that bill comes to the House. I think they're in a tight spot because they're damned if they do or damned if they don't. If they do pass it, Joe Biden gets a win. If they don't pass it, they're the ones that are going to take the heat for not doing anything on the border. They're fucked. And I think Joe Biden and Democrats did a wonderful job pigeonholing these dumb fucks.
I just had a thought, and I'm going to spitball it off you here. Here's what I think is going to happen with with that bill. It's going to come to the House, and Mike Johnson said it's dead on arrival in the House. It's
Right.
not going to pass. They only have a 2 or 3 seat majority.
Right.
They can't lose very many Republicans. I bet you he brings it up for a vote, thinking he's gonna own the libs by bringing it up to a vote and shooting it down. And I bet you it passes with every Democratic vote, and I bet 2 or 3 Republicans out of Texas vote along with it, and it might squeak by 1 or 2 votes, but it'll pass.
And
I
then
don't think it's going to be widely bipartisan out of the House. I think it's going to be only a couple of votes, but it's going to be just enough to get it to Joe Biden's desk, because those Texas Republicans know if they're anywhere close to the border, if they go back and say, "Hey, man, we voted against that border bill, but we got to fix this border," their people are going to go, "What the fuck?"
yeah. Well, one of the things I've said about this is that this is very much like the spending bills and the possibility of closing down the government if we didn't get the spending bill passed. Granted, we only got continuing resolutions, but even leading up to those continuing resolutions, Mike Johnson, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. And the Republicans said, yeah, we're not doing this. But in the end, they did it because they knew they would pay the price in the end if they didn't pass it. That happened 2 times. They caved to Joe Biden and the Democrats. And I think this is a similar situation because they're in a similar peril. If they don't pass this, they're going to be able to allow the Democrats to turn the border problem on them. And if they're smart, that's what they'll do. I think Republicans are fucked in this situation. No matter what they do, they're better off giving Joe Biden a win and then taking credit for the border bill, saying, "Yeah, we made Joe Biden do this." But they're not. They don't have enough foresight to see that.
No, no, they don't, and that's the problem. They've kicked out all the decent Republicans out of their party, the
Yeah.
ones who were sound strategists who could get them together behind closed doors and said, "Look, we're going to pass this, and then we're going to message the fuck out of it and say, hey, we forced Joe Biden to the table. We forced the Democrats to do this because they knew we were right all along." And but they don't have anybody like that. Anybody like that, they get kicked out as a rhino because they weren't loyal to Trump.
Right.
And because they realized Trump put Trump over party, Trump over country. And while Republicans don't care about putting the country before anybody else, they do care about putting the party over anything else. And which is why I'm surprised so many of them still hitched their wagon to Trump. But like I said, they kicked out all the ones that were reasonable enough to say, "Hey, party comes first," which it still shouldn't. It should be the country, but
Well, and I think anytime the Republicans say that's not happening, we're going to get tough, we're going to double down, they always fail. They always fail. So that's why I think the border thing will pass. Joe Biden will be able to hang his hat on it. Republicans will try to do whatever. But again, like infrastructure and all that stuff, all you have to do is show the voting list because if only 5 or 6 Republicans vote for it, all these other idiots who are now getting outed, the people taking credit for infrastructure and stuff, and then them being asked, well, why didn't you vote for it? The, these are all campaign commercials in the making. They're all on video saying this shit, and it's going to come back and bite them in the ass. It's almost silly how much bad is working against the Republicans.
oh, you're definitely right. And it's amazing. I know there was something about I saw about like Chuck Grassley had come out basically and said, well, I'm not voting for that for the border bill. It's serious down there, but we got to wait till President Trump can deal with it or something like I don't remember exactly what he had said, something along those lines, and he's getting blasted all over. One of them I saw was a 90-year-old senator refuses to do his job to give his in order that he might force his boss out of a job or something. something like that. But it was just, they were blasting him for not wanting to support it, all to support Trump. It's like, come on, guys, you're going to get taken to task. Um, you have to support this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, frankly, they got all they wanted in this border bill, pretty much. Not everything, but they got it. Part of the sticking point is money to Ukraine, and why they have a hard on for sending money to Ukraine. Anybody with common sense, anybody that understands history, anybody that understands how the Russians do things, know that this Ukraine money is absolutely necessary, not only for us, but for Europe and the world for that matter. Because, you know, if you let Vladimir Putin take over Ukraine, you know he's going to Poland next. Now that's NATO. Now we got a world war. Why not try to avoid that? But the Republicans, again, they know this, but they'd rather own Joe Biden than do what's best for this country and the world, for that matter.
I think that's part of it. I was thinking about this the other day. We always wonder, well, what does Donald Trump have on the Republicans that they kowtow to him? Well, when the RNC servers got hacked, I think that's where Trump got his information, but I bet you he got that information straight from Putin because
Oh
these
yeah,
guys sure seem to kowtow and bow to him. But what these Republicans, the voters, don't understand is when it says we're sending them $50 billion or 500 billion or whatever the number is, most of that money is not cash. It is in supplies, it's military equipment, and we're not sending them a lot of new things
right,
from what I've read. It's, oh, you know what? We're going to resupply the entire armory down at it used to be called Fort Hood in Texas. It was just the first one that popped in my head. But we're going to resupply the entire armory for Fort Hood or whatever with all new stuff, and we're going to send Ukraine all of their old, items.
right,
And that's where some of the money's coming from. We're upgrading our own equipment and sending them equipment that is still perfectly good and perfectly usable while making ourselves better in the
right,
process.
right. Well, and you won't ever hear that. The interesting thing, though, is with this thing with the Iranian terrorist, where they killed the three soldiers, American soldiers. And I think for a while they were talking about Biden being wimpy about this and stuff. And then Biden does what he does and hits them hard on Friday, Thursday or Friday, uh, hitting 7 locations, 85 targets, 120 uh, intelligent bombs, precision bombs. That was a pretty devastating attack and sent an interesting message. But what's even more interesting is that's apparently just the start. There's more coming. You haven't really heard the Republicans talk about it much. You know, either they would say he's wimpy or he's he's a genocide Joe or whatever. I get a kick out of that when they say that. It's just something they've heard on Fox. They don't even know what genocide means.
Oh, I guarantee they don't know the meaning of the word. Um, but yeah, I don't know all of the details of his counterstrike, but it sounded like it was pretty pinpoint, pretty strong.
Right.
And I mean, it sounds like more is coming. And I know some people are worried that it's going to be too much and we could end up into a war over there. And if it happens, it happens. We'll deal with it when it comes. But I think Joe is also sending the right message. You know what? We have the capability of pretty much ending any country that we want to
Right.
if we choose. We outspend the next, what is it, like top 10 countries combined or something like that on military might,
Right.
and
Including Russia.
including Russia. And I think this does send a message that, hey, we're not gonna tolerate and roll over just because you chose to do something.
Well, they specifically chose not to send bombs into Iran directly. They're hitting bases in Syria and Iraq in hopes that it won't escalate into a war. But I'll be honest with you, I don't see Iran. They said yesterday, yeah, we're gonna give them what for. We're gonna respond to. No, they're not. They might try to do some little shit, but Iran doesn't want to get in a war with America. They count on support from Russia, and Russia's a little fucking busy right now in Ukraine.
Yeah, and in Russia proved to the world how
They're weak.
underdeveloped their military was. They were considered, I think they were top five, one
Yeah.
of the top five militaries in the world. I don't know where exactly they fit on the chain. I think it's us, then China, then maybe Russia, um, something like that. But they should have been able to, with as strong as they were, suspected of being, they should have been able to roll over Ukraine in a couple of days. Here we are 18 months in or something like that, or is it 2 years now? And Ukraine's still holding strong and in fact gaining ground.
Yeah, well, that was that was the whole problem. His Vladimir Putin's advisors, military advisors, told him this will be 3 4 days. We'll be done with it. And then when it got to be a month, they got a little nervous. Now it's 18 months. It really exposed the Russian army that was once thought to be very powerful. They aren't. They're weak. They're incompetent. They're getting their ass kicked by a smaller country. Um, that exposed a lot about Russia in general as terms of their power. I'm sure fewer people are afraid of them. Even somebody like Poland, if they hit Poland or some NATO country, Russia's in deep shit because you got, I don't know how many NATO countries, but they're all going to get into this shit. And Russia should not want that to happen. But Vladimir Putin is such a fucking nutcase on the lines of Donald Trump. God knows what the fuck he would do.
You know, I mean, we would have to go in if Poland got hit as part of our NATO pact,
Right.
but I think it's like 30, 32, 35 countries, somewhere in
Yeah.
that range.
Right.
And I think combined their might alone without us, just us, and us just hanging back, being like, here's money, here's more money.
We'll back you up.
Um,
Yeah.
we'll come in if things get bad. That threat alone would be enough to do in Russia. And it I don't understand how he thinks he could take it on, but I bet he would try.
Well, and the one big strength they claim to have is the nuclear weapons, you know. But I've heard some stories too because they're so broke. Nobody's even sure if they've maintained those nuclear weapons. They've been sitting there for a long time, and you've got to do some maintenance on them. Who's to say they even have any nuclear weapons that are going to fucking work? It could be just a big bluff.
Very, very much could be. And I mean, the idea of having a that threat of that weapon, has always been great. But the minute they try to, like, oh, we're going to do it, and it backfires, they're done as a world power.
Well, that's exactly it. You blow your wad. It's like when you're trying to blackmail somebody. If you don't shut up, I'm going to tell them about this. Well, the moment you tell them about this, you got no more power. You're done. You better have gotten what you wanted because you blew your wad, and that's what they would be doing. They kind of did that with the troops that went into Ukraine. Oh, we're Russia, we're strong, and then we find out they're not so strong. They're a bunch of kids that don't even want to be in the military because they fucking drag everybody into it because they don't have enough people. They've kind of blown their wad in that situation, and that's why I'm saying I don't know that I mean I don't want to test it out, but I wouldn't be so sure that they're even that big a power nuclear wise either because they just don't have the money.
I would be more worried about, if they're that broke, where all of their weapons are
Yeah,
and who did they sell them to, than them actually having them and using them themselves.
right, right, exactly. Some little country that doesn't know anything doesn't just gets pissed off and shoots them off. Well, I tell you what, Eric, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric from Iowa is with us today. We in an interesting conversation. We're going to make a shift a little bit to the things at hand, the cases that Donald Trump is in. Now, I don't know that we can talk about all court cases because there's so fucking many. It would be all day thing and we'd have a 3 hour podcast. And I don't have that kind of stamina. And you're a younger guy, but I don't even think you could hold up that long. Um,
I could try.
yeah, I know you try. I would not try. I always get a kick out of the other podcasters. I hear them on TikTok. Well, like I always do, I do a podcast every 2 weeks. I'm going, what's the point of doing a podcast every 2 weeks, especially when we got important shit to talk about? I'm here every day and it's not always fun. Mostly it's fun, but we got some important shit to deal with and people need to know what's going on because we're sitting on the precipice here going toward November of 2024. I wanted to talk to you about this Letitia James thing. I know a lot of people are freaking out about it. Letitia James got a verdict from Judge Engeron that Donald Trump is liable for massive business fraud. He's already lost the case. Now we've got the situation where we're waiting for Judge Engeron to give us the number that's going to be what the state of New York is awarded from him. And there's talk of 370 million. He said he was going to do it by the end of January. Here we are on February 4th, and he still hasn't done it yet. And people are freaking out. And I say, settle the fuck down. There's a reason for it. Do you know the reason?
I've heard a couple different good ones actually.
Yeah, it could,
I know one was the perjury charge
right.
for Alan Weisselberg, that potentially is slowing him up a little bit, going, wait a minute, this fucker lied to me on the stand, and he's pleading guilty to lying to me. Now I got to go back out through over everything and, make sure I'm getting it right and maybe tack on some extra money. I heard that one. And then, there was another one. What was, I think you were going to talk about a different one.
Well, no, that's the one I was going to talk about. But when you mention it, there's the other situation where he's got that ghost $50 million loan.
Oh, that's the one I was thinking about. Isn't that where
He allegedly
uh,
loaned the money to another company within his realm, and then he was using it as a tax write-off, but there's no evidence that that loan ever occurred.
yeah, more fraud basically.
Yeah, exactly. So he may be getting another 50 million tacked on. That's why he's more than likely going to be over 400 million when it's said and done, and maybe as much as a half a billion when it's said and done. I mean,
Oh
Judge
yeah,
Engeron's making the only choice, and he pissed off Judge Engeron to know like nobody's business. Not a smart move.
yeah, I know. Whenever I talk to anybody about it, and I talk to a few coworkers, like I was mentioning during the break about politics, and I'm like, look at it this way. His attorney fucked up and forgot to ask for a jury. So the judge is the only one making this decision. And every day of the trial, he was doing nothing but pissing off the judge, not following court rules, attacking him, going out on social media and attacking him in interviews, calling him this, calling him that, calling him every other thing he could think of. What do you think is going to happen? They all go, oh, he's fucked.
Yeah, he's
And some
definitely
of these
fucked.
people don't follow politics as close as you and I, and
Right.
they see it.
Well, the thing about it is we can get some indication as to what his behavior does to a verdict, because of course we have the E. Jean Carroll case. She initially won $5 million. She was asking for 10 to 12. She ended up getting $83 million. And the reason she got $83 million is Donald Trump showed his behavior and criminality and his defamation right in court. That probably added on another $60 million before it was all said and done. And he used the same tactics with Judge Engeron. So how does he think that's going to work out?
I'd say in that case, the only saving grace is that it's the judge and judge only. I mean, could you imagine if he acted the way he did in the Eugene Carroll case in front of a jury where his company is on the line,
Yeah.
that figure could come back at $1 billion plus
Yeah.
with a jury sitting there, because people like to, when they hear about how bad things really are, they like to prove a point and really go after it. Um, where judges typically, while they still like to prove a point and award penalties, they like to stick closer to actual damages and not be,
Punitive.
not be as punitive unless you really piss them off.
Right.
So, whatever verdict Judge Engeron comes out with, a jury might have awarded double.
Well, and the thing about it is, Judge Engeron delaying his decision, that isn't good news for Donald Trump. Everybody might be freaked out about it, like he's going to give in to Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. He's already found that he's guilty. It's just a matter of how much he's going to pay. Even if he said, well, let's go easier on him and we'll only make it $250 million, it's enough to sink Donald Trump.
Oh yeah. And as we've talked about, if he wanted to appeal it, he'd have to put the money up in a bond, or which nobody's going to lend him that kind of credit. No bondsman anyway, because even if he gets a bond, puts 20% up, if he loses the case on appeal, he has to pay that bondsman back almost immediately.
Right.
No bondsman is going to look at him and go, yeah, you're good for it. So he's not getting a bond. He doesn't have the cash. And when he's ordered to shutter his businesses, the receiver is going to go through and shut everything down, pay all bills associated with each of these businesses they shut down. And he only gets the crumbs that are left over after all of his after all of his debts and creditors are paid.
Right. Right. Well,
And with the way he runs his business empire, everything is out on credit.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have much equity in his shit. He's leveraged to the hilt, like every guy in his position is. The thing about it is that in the first case with Eugene Carroll, she was awarded $5 million. He was in that very same situation. He needed to put up the money or a bond in order to appeal it. And if you remember what happened, he put up the 5 million himself because he couldn't get a bond. So you think he's going to get a bond for $83 million? I don't think so. He's going to have to put it up himself, or they're just going to come and take it.
Well, I don't know at what point or how long he has to pay it. I know he's got 30 days to appeal,
Right.
but I do know, I
Well,
don't know.
he's
I know there's eventually a point when she can go after him and say, okay, force him to pay. And that can happen. I just don't know how long that is, but every day that he's not paying, they're just tacking on more and more interest.
yeah, they say it's $26,000 a day, but here's the thing. He's got to put the money up before he can appeal. He cannot appeal unless he
Right.
puts the money up. So that's his option. His only claim is I'm going to appeal it. Well, you go ahead. You get your 83 million. Now I heard, remember the Mooch Scaramucci? He was
Yeah.
the communications guy for 20 minutes for Donald Trump, and now he's talking shit about Donald Trump. He says, he may have the money to put up the 83 million himself because no one's going to give him credit. I mean, you've got a company that's been found guilty of 17 fraud charges, felony fraud charges. Um, all your companies are losing money. You're looking to go to jail. No one's going to extend him credit. Anybody that would extend him credit is fucking crazy. All the big donors aren't going to help him out because they're bailing on him. He's going to have to come up with the $83 million. And let's say Scaramucci's right. He can come up with the 83. It's going to be hard, but he can come up with it. But when he gets hit with $370 million, he don't have that. He said he has everything from 400 million to 150 million in cash. But the fact is, that came out of Donald Trump's mouth. So you're almost assured that's a lie. He doesn't have
Oh,
that kind of cash. Otherwise, he wouldn't be grifting all this other shit.
it's probably a 30th of that.
Yeah, probably.
He probably has five. He probably had 5 million cash the first time, and that probably took most of his cash. So he needed to run another grift to prop him back up to about 5-6 million in the bank. he doesn't have, I think Scaramucci's way off. I don't think he's got 83 million to put up in the bank.
I don't think so either.
Um, and if he somehow scrapes it by, that is going to take all of his cash.
Yeah. Well, and he's like you say, he's got 30 days and he's already more than a week in. So he's got like 20 days to come up
I
with
think
cash and appeal.
I think today being the fourth, I think that's day 9. So he's
Oh,
only
is it?
got 3 weeks. I think it's like 8 or 9
Oh,
of,
that's right. It's
of 30.
February.
So yeah.
Well,
So he
he's got to have a reason to appeal it too. And he's got a problem there because he had an incompetent fucking lawyer. And you know what she did? She agreed with every bit of evidence that was entered. She didn't know any better. She didn't think ahead. So because she agreed to have all this evidence in, they can't really appeal on evidence because she agreed to it. So, and then
no,
somebody
no.
then somebody said, well, though he'll just say I had incompetent lawyers and I'll appeal on that basis. Unfortunately, you can't do that in civil cases. So he's fucked and fucked and fucked.
Yeah, he's really fucked up. One analyst I was watching, it might have been Legal Dad or Hawking, or it might have been somebody else, but they were talking about her admitting or agreeing to all that evidence. Every time they tried to bring in a statement or a document or whatever, she was sitting there, no objection. And they said most trial attorneys would have objected or they wouldn't have said anything
Right.
because they know better than to get on the record and say no objection. That's the shit you see on TV and like on Law and Order or some courtroom drama. And now it calls into question her ability to even be an attorney. I know she tried that little bit right afterward with Judge Kaplan, right after the case, and calling into question his relationship Roberta Kaplan. And the minute they came back with and said, "Well, I think bar recommendations are in order for just for this alone." Suddenly, she backed the fuck off
Yep.
so fast, it because she knew she was fucked. She probably submitted the whole thing at Trump's request, and then her common sense took over and said, "Oh, my future's done here if I proceed with this." And
I think
I
her
was thinking
future's done
about it.
anyway. I think her future's done
Oh,
anyway. The publicity she got, nobody wants that piece of shit representing them.
oh, probably. I mean, she'll be lucky to go back to doing small time shit. Maybe writing up some contracts and things like that where you're not in a courtroom. Um, but I've heard that Donald Trump has fired her, and he's
Yeah.
looking for other representation for this appeal because she was incompetent. But I don't think it was that. I think it was her backing off the claim with Judge Kaplan when he started talking, or when Roberta Kaplan said, "Hey, I think Your Honor should look into referring her to the bar over this," and she backed off. I think Trump fired her for not listening to his stupid bullshit.
Right. And that's what I think is they didn't lose this case solely because Alina Habba is incompetent. She certainly is incompetent. They lost because he convinced her to do everything he told her to do. And unfortunately, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about the law. He only knows about bullying, and it bit him in the ass in this particular case. And Alina Habba was just showed how stupid and weak she is by doing whatever Donald Trump told her, even if she knew it would be um, not good for the case and certainly not good for her.
Exactly. And Donald Trump doesn't know fuck all about fuck all. He's
That's
proven
true.
that time and time again. I mean, it doesn't matter the subject, except maybe for how to shit his pants and eat a Big Mac. But even then, I don't know if he's successful at doing those two things.
No, no.
Um,
Well, then we were
but
talking about his delusion or his slide, mental or cognitive slide. Shortly after this case and him losing $83 million, he was standing in a press conference or something, and somebody says, are you going to use campaign money to pay this thing with Eugene Karoloff, and he acted like he didn't know what she was talking about it. But then when he finally reacted to it, he said, "Oh, we won that. We won that on appeal." Does he not know he didn't win, or is he just trying to gaslight fucking people? I don't know which. It may be a combination, but that was almost pathetic to watch. I mean, we all saw how this case went. It's not up for debate. There's no gray area here.
Like I said before, I don't know if he is gaslighting himself. I don't know if he has to keep telling himself this just because he can't deal with the reality that he lost, or what the deal is. But no, he's sliding bad. He keeps talking about how he passed this cognitive test and recounts what it is, like it was some big thing that proves he's a genius and he's very sharp. And
Yeah,
yet, every time he brings it up, he makes himself look more and more like a fool because that's a dementia test,
yeah, yeah.
and he doesn't realize it, that he's verbalizing the fact that they're giving him tests to see if he has dementia, and he's acting like he's passing the SAT with a 1600 score.
Well, he maybe did, but somebody else took the fucking test. That's the problem with it. But you know he, and then we have this other case that people are freaking out about, and hopefully people understand this Letitia James thing and why it's delayed. It's not good news for Donald Trump. It's bad news for Donald Trump. It's not like Judge Engeron is going to say, let's not charge him anything. He's going to get hit. He's going to get hit hard. I think it's going to be at least $370 million, which is going to be the end of Donald Trump financially, but it'll probably be more than that. I honestly believe that. But then we have the Washington D.C. election interference case with Judge Chutkin and uh, and Jack Smith. We're still waiting for some reason from the appellate court to decide whether or not Donald Trump has absolute immunity. We know what the answer is going to be. Anything short of them saying no, he doesn't have immunity is going to be a problem for that appellate court, and it's going to be ridiculous. So we know they're going to find that he's not immune, but they still have not come up with a decision. So Judge Chutkin says, all right, we're going to take that March 4th date off the docket. And people are freaking out because they think, well, Donald Trump was successful in delaying the trial, and that's not really what's happening here. It may not look good for Jack Smith, but I think Judge Chutkin is trying to push the appellate court, trying to stick it in their eye, saying, "You're fucking up my trial here. Let's get to the fucking answer."
Yeah, I've seen other commenters saying the exact same thing, that this isn't a win for Donald Trump. If anything, it's her uh, putting some fire under the appellate court, saying, "Look, now you're messing with the court schedule. Now we got to redo my entire calendar. What's the holdup?" But she's doing it in a way that is subtle enough the public isn't going to understand what she's doing, but direct enough that the appellate court is gonna get the message.
Little passive aggressive, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's how. But this is also, I guess, I don't remember which creator I was watching was talking about that this is also a common practice for judges to do
Right.
things like this when they need to hurry things along with an appellate court or something like that. And we know he's going to appeal it to the Supreme Court, and it would not surprise me if the appellate court says nope, Donald Trump does not have immunity, presidents don't have immunity, that the Supreme Court doesn't even take it.
No, I don't think
I,
they
I
will
really
take it.
think I don't think they're going to take it up on oral arguments. I don't think they're. I think they're just going to refuse to hear it, and it's going to stand with whatever the appellate court says.
Well,
Because
yeah, I agree. Well, the thing about it is somebody said this, and I don't know if this is a good observation or not. I tend to disagree with it because what they're saying seems a little ridiculous. But they're saying that the reason the appellate court is taking too long is because they want to make sure they have a unanimous decision, all three on board, so that when it gets to the Supreme Court's going to go, yeah, that sounds right, and just cut it loose. My question to that would be, how could any one of the three say, well, he might have immunity? I just don't understand anybody making that argument.
I don't think it's so much that they're not already unanimous. I bet you um they are trying to get it right for the Supreme Court. And what they're trying to do is take their time with a very well thought out, well crafted decision
Probably.
that you know it's what we're going to get is going to be a wordy, lengthy decision out of this appellate court, in my opinion, and it's going to be, you know, with listing other court cases, other documents, references to when things happened in history, etc., that it's going to be very hard for the Supreme Court to look at their decision and overturn it.
Right.
Whereas if they would have come out with a three-court panel ruling that just, or three-judge panel ruling that just said, nope, presidents do not have absolute immunity, and it was one sentence and done, Supreme Court might have took the case up. I think they're going to try to word this as close to a Supreme Court decision as they can and stick it to the Supreme Court to try to overturn them with everything they've got in this decision.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in the same vein, the Supreme Court is walking into a hornet's nest with this 14th Amendment thing. I can't imagine they'd want another one with something so ridiculous and so frivolous. That 14th Amendment is going to fuck with them because either way they go in the 14th Amendment thing, they're in trouble. Because if they go against Donald Trump and he's off the ballot, that's going to stir the whole MAGA nation. But if they side with Donald Trump has already been caught trying to coerce them through the media, and people are just going to say, well, you folded to Donald Trump. So they're damned if you do and damned if you don't in the 14th Amendment case. They're not going to want to step into another one with this immunity thing, especially since it's so fucking ridiculous.
You're right. I think, and I don't know if there's anything that goes on behind the scenes that we don't hear about. And I'm not entirely wanting to be a conspiracy theorist with this, but I wonder if there isn't a little bit of talk between the Supreme Court and the appellate court in this DC immunity case saying, hey, we're going to have enough with this case. You guys get it right. Give us something that we can just agree with.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not saying, I don't want to sound like I'm saying they work behind the scenes like that, but I also wouldn't be surprised if that was something that happened. Because you're right, they have a hornet's nest with this 14th Amendment case, and I just don't see how they can side with Donald Trump on it. They're going to have to go against him, but unless they drag their feet on writing their opinion out to pass the election to where it's a moot point, I don't see how they side with Donald Trump
On the immunity or the
on
14th?
any of it, but on how the Supreme Court sides with Donald Trump on the 14th Amendment. Because they almost have to get something out there, get it done quickly. And because if they try to sidestep it, their credibility, which is already in the shitter, is even worse.
Well, I kind of think it's funny when you said you don't know if there's anything going on behind the scenes. Well, we do know fancy vacations and RVs are going on behind the scenes, so anything could be going on behind the scenes.
True.
The other thing about the 14th Amendment thing is they've been getting a lot of, what do they call them?
Amicus briefs, friend of the court
Amicus briefs
briefs.
from a lot of people, a lot of respectable people, judges, lawyers, politicians. They've been getting a lot of this stuff, so they're getting some heat already on this 14th Amendment thing. And if they were doing it fairly, they'd have to agree with Colorado. But the thing about it is what people fail to remember about this 14th Amendment. This is only about being on the ballot in the primary. This is not being on the ballot in the general election. Um, However, if they decide he can't be on the ballot because of the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment doesn't say you can't run for election. It does say you can't hold office. And that may be the one thing that the Supreme Court might use in their favor. Well, yeah, doesn't say he can't be on the ballot. It does say he can't hold office. Let's wait until the time when it looks like it's close to him being in office, and then we'll decide this. That's the only way I think they can try to talk their way out of this, and that might be splitting hairs.
Well, the problem is with that is you end up in it working yourself into a circular loop,
Right.
because you put up a candidate that may be ineligible, but you have to wait till after he actually wins the office, and then you have to strike him down by saying he was ineligible, so he never should have been able to run.
Yeah.
You can't. To me, if you and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge by any means, but if you're ineligible to hold the office, you should be ineligible to run for the office.
Yeah.
It's
Theoretically.
it's a distinction without a difference, really.
Right.
I know there's another term for it, but basically, like you said, you're splitting hairs. Where he's saying, "Well, I can run," and that's one of Donald's uh, arguments is, "I can be on the ballot. Does just because I can't hold the office doesn't mean I can't run." The only reason he wants to run is to grift money.
Grift money and hopefully save his ass from prison. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But everybody's freaking out. It's taken too long. He should be in jail. I go, just relax. I get this sense we're on the right track right now, and things are falling in place. I mean, they want to bitch about the economy, and Joe Biden's got the highest stock market ever. The jobs thing comes out. Even Republicans are saying, geez, yeah, that is pretty good. Everything's going the way of Joe Biden and everything's going against Donald Trump. I think this trend will continue and he'll get buried as well as the Republicans do by November of 2024. It just seems like that's where the momentum is at this point.
Well, oh yeah, and you talk about the stock market. Even Donald Trump himself is saying the stock market's doing really good under Joe Biden,
But
because
it's
he comes
because
out
of
and
him.
says, "Well, I hope the stock market crashes between now and the election because so it looks bad for Joe."
Yeah.
Well, if you have half an ounce of rational thinking, if he's saying the stock market has to crash so it looks bad for Joe, that means Joe's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, it does. It does. And
But
I don't see the stock market crashing in the next 6 months.
no, no, I mean something drastic would have to happen for it to crash, and that's that's
And,
what normally happens for it to crash. You have something major like it crashed pretty bad around 9/11. It crashed with the housing market when that all happened, and then again in what was it? What right around 2012, I think there was another financial
right,
crisis where it crashed again with outside influences. But I think Joe Biden's the right person to lead us through that. And I think in part because of how thin the Republican majority is in Congress,
right,
he's got them right where he wants them. They have to agree with him.
right, right. Exactly. Exactly. Now, the other court case that's troubling a lot of people is down in Georgia. This horrible scandal that Fani Willis had an inappropriate affair with the special counsel Nathan Wade. And then Fani Willis comes out and says, well, yeah, I did have a relationship with him, not prior to hiring him, but since hiring him. I've got some Democrats going, oh, that's the end. The Georgia case is done. And that's absolutely ridiculous. It's just rhetoric and the narrative that the Republicans continually do. They try to spin different things, exaggerate things, and try to smear people. But personally, this thing with Fani Willis isn't going anywhere. It's not because it has no bearing on the case.
No, it does. It's not it's not has no bearing on the case. It is a bad look for Fani. She should have
Yeah, it is.
known better. I don't, but things happen. But you don't when you're in that kind of a thing and you're taking on this high profile of a case, you got to be watching it because you know how bad the Republicans like to sling mud.
Yeah.
And, you know, if this relationship had started prior to the case starting or him getting hired, that'd be one thing. But the fact that it started after, just it all looks bad. But you're right, it has no bearing on the case. All Republicans are trying to do is use it as a way of confusing the narrative
Right.
and distracting away from the fact that, oh, see, he actually committed these crimes. It's just them saying, well, see, prosecutor did something wrong in her personal life. It should all go away. It's all bad.
Well, it's like everything they do. Joe Biden got money under the table from Hunter Biden. Yeah, we don't have any evidence, but that sounds bad. Or Donald Trump trying to smear Hillary Clinton about the emails. That never came to fruition. This is what they do. They don't have any policy. They don't have any historical success. All they can do is try to make the other person look bad. And each and every time they've tried to do that up to this point hasn't worked because it's always been lame. It's always been no evidence. And that's what's going to happen with Fonnie Willis. Is it going to delay it a little bit? Well, maybe, but it doesn't matter. My premise is this with the Florida thing, everybody says, when's he going to get rid of Cannon? I think that we're getting close to the point when Jack Smith is going to be in a position to get Cannon out of there. I think he's waiting for the right time. He's setting everything up to do that. But even if Georgia and Florida get delayed past the election, so what? This lawsuit for $370 million, the Manhattan District case, the DC case. By the time they get to Georgia and Florida, Donald Trump is going to be a fucking oil spot in Mar-a-Lago. There's not going to be much left of him at that point.
If he's even living in Mar-a-Lago by that point, he could
Well,
be
yeah.
sitting on the side of the road with a cardboard sign saying, please feed a former president
Well, that's very
for
true.
free
And
Big Macs.
people say they can't get Mar-a-Lago because he's in that's in Florida. This is in New York. Well, a company in New York that he formed owns fucking Mar-a-Lago, and then they'll say they'll never get Donald. I get this all the time. They'll never get Donald Trump because Florida has all these laws where he can hide money. It ain't about Florida. It's about New York, and they think that he can cover his ass. No, he can't because this is about him and his businesses.
Well, see, and that, like you said, if Trump organization had been formed in Florida and some of the stuff had been done down there, yes. But no, like you said, he has all of it based out of New York. The company that owns Mar-a-Lago is one of the 50 or however many LLCs he owns. I can't remember if it was 50 or 500 LLCs that are all under the Trump thing, with all just moving money from here to there and here to there. But one of them has the deed to Mar-a-Lago as the primary owner or whatever.
Right.
And that's a New York-based entity, which means if they start stripping it down, it can go away too.
Well, and what you said before is that it's not like Donald Trump can use his genius and start selling off properties and turn over big profits. That's not possible because he's probably leveraged all the stuff. It's got big mortgages on it, but he can't even choose what to sell, how to sell it. It's going to be this receiver, this Barb or something, and she's just going to sell stuff off. She's not going to care if there's any process to it. It's just a matter of getting the money to cover the bills, and this shit's going to get fire sold.
Oh yeah, it's going to be. We're putting up Trump Tower for sale. We're putting it out, and we're probably going to take first offer. Okay, we got an offer of 25 million. Okay, what do we have for bills? Oh, well, he owes 30 million on everything connected to Trump Tower. Okay, on to the next. How about Trump Hotel in Vegas? Let's get. Oh, somebody wants it for 50 million. All right, sold. And on to the next, and on to the next. He might end up owing money
Oh yeah.
after they fire and sell everything he owns and get zero return on any of it.
Well, and that's kind of what I expect because, like you say, if he's got a $50 million hotel in Las Vegas, how much equity does he actually have? If he only has 10 million equity, that's really all they can use to pay whatever debt they're trying to pay. He's still going to owe the money, the 30
Right.
million or 40 million that he's borrowed against it.
And the way I understand it, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like bankruptcy isn't going to save him from these judgments
No, it won't.
because even if they because the Trump organization, even if he declares bankruptcy on it, it's getting dissolved, which means he
Right.
won't be able to restructure it with bankruptcy either.
No.
This is we could be weeks away from him being literally penniless.
Well, and that's what I've always been saying. Everybody says, I'm not going to be happy till he's in jail. Frankly, I said in the beginning, and in the beginning, I didn't think he'd ever go to jail because of what I didn't know. Now that I know, I think he's going to jail, no question. But just by breaking him financially, breaking him emotionally, changing his perception, that would be enough to destroy him completely. And I still think that's going to happen. So he may be emotionally broken before he even gets to a criminal trial.
Oh yeah, I mean, we think his decline's bad now. Wait till he's down to living in a one room apartment funded by urban development or HUD or whatever, low income housing, because he doesn't have any income, no money, no properties to his name. He will be uh losing it completely. He probably won't even be able to put three words together to form a sentence.
No, he'll be in some hospital or something. But, people will say, oh, that'll never happen to Donald Trump. Remember Bernie Madoff's wife? How did she end up? She was living in a shitty little apartment and she was married to a billionaire at one point. Yeah, this could happen. They don't fuck around when it comes to the money and all this shit. They'll People will say to me, "Well, he just won't pay it. He'll appeal it." Well, he's first got to put up the money if he's going to appeal it, and if he just doesn't pay it, they will just start, like I say, going to the receiver and selling off shit willy nilly, whatever they got to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Bernie Madoff. That's actually a great example. Basically, everything with Bernie Madoff, all of his wealth was built on a house of cards. It was, I'm going to borrow $10 from this guy. Okay, well, I can't pay him 10, so I'm going to borrow 20 from him, give that guy 15. Now I've got five, so I got to borrow 30 from this guy. And that's basically what Trump has done with his entire empire,
Yeah, it's basically a sophisticated pyramid scheme.
effectively, except he used property and insurance and legal ways of doing it, legal-ish ways of doing it, I should say, because we know it's fraud. But these business types, they do it all the time. They leverage all their stuff upside down to the hilt, and then use that to buy something else, where they really don't have all of the wealth they think they do
Right. Or
until they can
claim
get
to
it all
have.
debt clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. And if Donald Trump isn't the epitome of it, I mean, Bernie Madoff is is not a lot different than Donald Trump, except he's a lot smarter. He was a lot smarter. He still got caught. And I'm not saying, Bernie Madoff, when he made his first billion, he's just said, fuck it, I'm out of here. I'm going to an island in the middle of someplace where nobody can find me. But his ego wouldn't let him do that. He kept going until he got caught. And Donald Trump's much the same. He thinks they're kind of like these athletes that make $10 million a year. They make it for 5 or 6 years and they think, this 10 million a year is going to come for the rest of my life. And then they run into a rude awakening when the shit stops. And Donald Trump's got another bigger problem. All his businesses are currently losing money. So he's got no profit to actually deal with anything. This guy is going to be
Yeah.
so broke, he might very well be living in a one-bedroom apartment because Melania ain't coming with him. I guarantee you that.
Oh, you could take what's her name? Carrie Lake.
Well, she's going to need a place too because she's getting her ass sued off. Now, I've wondered about this. Want to see what you think about this. Melania and Barron are kind of out of the picture right now, and she just recently re uh, re renegotiated her deal with Donnie should they break up, which they will, of course. Do you think she was smart enough to make Donnie put money into a trust fund before all this stuff started so that she and Barron can live pretty good?
Maybe, but the problem is it comes down to, just like we've talked about with everything else, timing. Because
Yeah.
if she knew if he was already under investigation for this fraud, and they knew this was coming before he moved the money around, they can still backtrack it and take that. It's not perfect. It's not 100% safe.
True. True. Well, the other thing about it is too is that we don't talk about it much, but Donald Trump will be devastated and decimated, but so will his sons because they're in this fucking thing too. They're going to be destroyed, and they are a lot younger and going to live a lot longer. They've got a lot of time to suffer through this fucking embarrassment.
Well, yeah, and anything that is in their names would be gone too. They will be just as broke.
Yeah.
And if they get, and depending on the judgment here, they could go right back with criminal charges against Trump and Sons, and they could go to prison for this yet. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
not to mention anything that if they're connected, which we know they're connected to January 6th, maybe the document case in Florida, but they could end up, at least Eric and Don Jr., spending the rest of their days in prison.
Well, that's one of the things when we talk about those two and we talk about Donald Trump, everybody has got their mindset that Donald Trump has to be convicted of everything in order to win this thing. As I said before, all he needs is one or two convictions and he's done. And that could happen, if the DC thing gets pushed back to April, then Manhattan District comes in. What's he got, like 15, 16 felonies in there, charges? If he gets if he gets hit with one of them, and he most certainly will, that may be the end game right there before he even gets to the other criminal cases.
Oh, exactly. I mean, one or two convictions from anywhere, you're probably looking at 10 years. I don't think he's got 10 years left
No.
in the best of condition. They're already giving him dementia tests. I mean, he's not going to be in good shape. You put the stress of prison on him, I give it a couple tops, before he's too senile to do anything. And it, like I said, him getting this criminal conviction could be at the end of it.
And he's got no money to fight it at that point. Keep him out of jail, do
Right.
all this other stuff. I mean, the fact I've said this too, and I'm curious as to what you think about this. We've had the criminal case in Manhattan District with Alan Weisselberg and the company, the Trump organization. Now we have this lawsuit. He's lost that. He's going to get hit hard financially. It would not at all surprise me if Alvin Bragg came back and said, well, now that we got all this behind us, Donald Trump's weak enough, we might as well throw some criminal charges at him too, and his kids. I think that's what you were um, talking about. Alvin Bragg could theoretically and probably should come up with criminal charges in the Manhattan District regarding all the fraud. It's been proven in two different fucking courtrooms, and we know they had their hands all over this shit.
Oh yeah, and this verdict could be just the catalyst he needs to do it. He probably has all the information.
Yeah,
Um, Between that and the perjury conviction because of the guilty plea for Alan Weisselberg, I think it'd be a slam dunk because somebody I was reading was talking about that, and they basically said he has in as part of this deal that he's working out is it would involve completely testifying against Donnie
right, right.
about the things that he lied about under oath, and that would be devastating criminally against Donald Trump.
Well, absolutely. And the interesting thing is I heard this way back when, but the Manhattan District, when it was Cy Vance, the Manhattan District and Letitia James, they shared back and forth evidence. They were helping one another with evidence. So now that this civil court is finding out that Donald Trump is culpable and guilty of this fraud, it would be a natural thing for Alvin Bragg to say, okay, well, this has been proven in court. Let's go after his shit. It's just a matter of what's left of him by the time they do.
Oh yeah. And I heard was it the Stormy Daniels case, I think,
Yeah,
that's also being brought by Alvin Bragg,
right.
that one could get moved up as quick as March now. There's a court date basically where he's going to go out and they're going to have a court date to determine with Trump's attorneys basically, are you free to do this trial? And if yes, because no other case is taking place, they're going ahead like the following week or something. Um, and if they bring this other case with uh, this fraud, that could be tacked on yet by the end of the year in an open window for court time. Because I bet you they're pretty close to ready to go to trial on that again. I
Well,
mean,
Stormy Daniels case was scheduled to start March 26th, and they were kind of holding back to let Jack Smith and the Washington case go. Um, but if the Washington case is delayed till April or May, then Alvin Bragg says, yeah, we can start March 4th. And so even if Donald Trump is successful in delaying, and I don't think they will, because Judge Chutkin, as soon as he gets the appeal back, she could say, okay, now we're going to do it April 1. It'll come that quickly. But even if they do delay the Washington case, Manhattan District's going to say, oh, good, a window. We're going to do it now. So one way or another, he's going to be on in a criminal trial in March.
yeah, exactly. And then you add in the other Alvin Bragg case with this, where he could bring more charges. It's just Donnie is beyond fucked.
Yeah, there's no way out of this. Like I say, it's just a matter of you can only take so much money and put him in jail for so long. He's a 78-year-old guy. It's not going to take to over much to overwhelm him and destroy him. It's going to happen. It has to, with all we know. Anybody who thinks he's going to slip out of this is a fucking imbecile.
Yeah, and I know you can only take so many years of his life and so much money away from him, but I think beyond that, I think the rest of the cases need to play out with all of the charges that they end up
Oh
bringing
yeah, yeah,
while he's still alive. Whether he gets charges out of Michigan, charges out of Arizona, if they bring in some charges from New Jersey, more charges in DC, whatever they end up doing, I think it's important that all of those cases play out, even if he already has enough jail time to where he'll never see the light of day as a free man again. Um, just because it goes to ruining his reputation, his legacy, and he will be a pariah for all of history, and that needs to happen.
it does need to happen, but it'll do something else. Not only for punishing Donald Trump, it'll set a precedence and a guardrail for the future. He needs to be taken to task for everything he's done, and whoever might be coming in the future needs to know I can't do that shit because Donnie got fucked. It will be a good deterrent for future politicians from doing the same bullshit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember, kind of off topic, but I remember listening to a political podcast, and they were talking about policing and criminal justice here in the United States. And I don't remember the figure, but we by far and away surpass most of the developed nations for length of sentence,
Right.
above and beyond. But we are drastically low on percentages of crimes solved and prosecuted, and where convictions are gotten. That, well, like a lot of the other countries don't do life in prison for murder. It might only be 20 years, but they prosecute like 90 some percent of them with convictions and 20
Right.
year sentences.
Right.
And that's the bigger deterrent. And I think that's what we need to do in this case is, showing that we got the guy for all of this as the deterrent going forward.
And then a precedent is set um, so that anybody who wants to steal documents or try to overthrow the country they know what's going to happen because it happened to Donnie Trump. And that's absolutely going to be crucial. And like you say, we need to do that for this country, because one of the things we found out in the last 5 years is that our judicial system, our Congress, none of them have the teeth everybody thought they had. And we've got to somehow get that strength and that fear. Because right now, when it comes to subpoenas or anything with the Congress, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody's fearful of that. They ain't going to do anything. And same with the judicial system. All you have to do is keep appealing and appealing, and I'll never go to jail. That shit has to be straightened out so people don't feel comfortable doing this shit again.
Well, yeah, you're right. And prior to uh the last 7, 8 years, basically prior to Donald Trump, um, like when it came to congressional subpoenas or even impeachment, etc., the norm and the expected thing of our politicians is that they would always put country over party and country over person.
Right.
And we've come to realize that's not the case. They're not our politicians and our legal system isn't built the way we thought it was. And
No.
like you said, we have to get this thing fixed, put teeth back in place where it needs to be, and, you know, make people fearful of doing the wrong thing again.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to have some kind of deterrent for the future, because once politicians think they can get away with something, what's that old phrase? If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And the politicians have been doing it for the last 7 years. So that's got to come to a stop. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric, thank you for coming on and having the great conversation. It's always wonderful to get the insight of listeners, especially when Eric comes on. He's very insightful. And, here's this we got a big dumb white guy sitting in the Twin Cities, and I'm not going to say you're dumb, because you're not dumb, but a big white guy sitting in Iowa, and we're breaking this shit down and fixing shit. And that's impressive.
Yeah, we just talk about it with a little bit of common sense, a little bit of common perspective, and it's not as complex as what a lot of people would have us believe.
No, it's not. And
Because,
including the media.
yeah, the media wants us to think it's some big complex issue. So do politicians. So they're the only ones giving you the right breakdown, the right analysis, and they only have the answer.
Right, right.
We prove all the time. Everyday people know just as much if you just stop and think about it for a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, the media doesn't break it down like we break it down here, because they don't think it translates into ratings. They think scaring and sensationalizing thing are the thing to get ratings. So that's why you don't get all the facts. As much as I like to think there'll be a lot of people listening to the podcast or my TikToks, I'm not doing it for the ratings. I'll take the ratings if they're good, but if they're not, I don't give a shit. We're doing what we can given the platform we have, and it may be a little, it may be a lot, but at least we're doing something.
Exactly. And but the media, they only chase the ratings. If they actually stopped and thought about it and watched stuff like your podcast and other things like it, they would realize there's a much bigger market for good, common, easily digested analysis, and it would do their ratings would go through the roof by comparison to the fear tactics.
Oh, I'd
But
agree.
they all chase Fox News because Fox News is one of the highest rated programs because it's worked. So they just copy it.
I think what uh, TV news does is insulting to the general public, acting like the general public is not smart enough to know. And I think we prove here with the podcast and the TikToks and stuff, there's plenty of smart people out there that know some shit. Because the one thing I hear from people when it listen to the podcast or TikToks, they'll say something like, "You said exactly what I've been thinking," or "You said it in a way that makes it more understandable." A lot of people think like us. We just haven't been able to bring those people together and somebody loud enough and stupid enough to say it, like you and me. So
Exactly.
the people are smart enough. It's just that the media refuses to believe that. And to me, that's insulting to the general public. That's why I get a little annoyed when I sit and watch uh, watch regular media. I'm going, fuck, just get to the point.
Exactly. I think I was telling you during the break, I break it down with some of my coworkers and I just tell them plain as day, this is what it is. Like I broke down the fraud case of him taking two sets of documents. And my one coworker was like, oh, that's what this is all about? Oh, he's fucked.
Yeah.
And the minute I broke it down as simple as I could, and they went, oh shit! Like I could visibly see the dots connecting as
Yeah.
to what I was telling them, and they're like, "This seems like it's so cut and dry." It's like because it is. It's not complex if you get your information from sources that break it down.
It is, and it's like the election, and people say, why are you so confident he's going to be not going to be elected? Well, he's embracing overturning Roe v. Wade. 70% of the people support Roe v. Wade, and he's taken away constitutional rights from 50% of this country. That alone is enough to make them lose the election. You throw everything else in, it's going to be a fucking landslide. At least I think it's going to be.
I do too, and I hope I'm right. I mean, I don't even if it's not a landslide, and we only barely squeak by. I don't see any way in which we don't retake the House, we don't hold the Senate, and hold on to Joe Biden in office.
Yeah, I don't see how
I
that's
just don't
possible.
see any way.
I've asked people, I said, I'll tell you why I think Joe Biden and the Democrats will win across the board. Now, you tell me why you think the Republicans and Donald Trump will win. And none of them have a salient point of any kind. They don't have, it's just the feeling they get. Well, it's on the news. I like what Donald Trump does. Well, okay, tell me what you liked. And they can't tell me that. It's just, it's like a paper tiger. They got a lot of noise, but nothing on the inside. And that's just not going to work.
Exactly. Like I think Old Soul was talking about how she got her relative was talking about Trump, and then they turned the volume way down and was just reading the words and went, "Oh, I didn't realize that was what he was saying." They get so caught up in the noise and the bluster and the bravado, they're not listening to the words that are actually being said.
That's exactly
And I think
right.
that's half the problem. They're not listening to the if they listen to the words that are being talked about, a lot of them will go, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the rest of us are doing is we're not getting caught up in the noise and the bluster and the bravado, and we're listening to the words, and that's why we can see a path forward where Donald Trump can't win.
Right. Absolutely. All right, Eric, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for coming on. It's always an intelligent conversation. I think the folks get a lot out of it, and I appreciate you coming by.
All right, well, thanks again for having me, and I look forward to being back on later.
All right. I appreciate those folks that take the time to listen. I hope you have a great day. And of course, we'll talk to you again tomorrow.